Hey, welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at the Iliad, Book 15. And this is the moment that is really the building up to one of the most important moments in the book. Really, almost all of Book 15 is just increasing tension. So let's see how that works. But first, let's look at some of the main characters in this book. Several of the main characters in this particular book are the gods. We've seen Hera and Poseidon going behind Zeus's back in the previous book. We're going to see the repercussions of that in this book. However, at this point, Zeus is really putting his plan fully into play. And so Zeus, who's allowed a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and been manipulated here and there throughout the book, is now finally going to be pushing his plan fully into action. Hera is finally going to have to sit back and accept Zeus's will, although she doesn't do it with perfect grace. There's also Poseidon, who did so much damage in the last book. And here we're going to see how Poseidon reacts to Zeus checking him. We'll also see Apollo being put back into the action here. And we'll see how Apollo enjoys that position, being allowed to stride in front of the Trojan army. We're also returning to some of our major heroes, most importantly in this book, Ajax and Hector. Ajax is the powerful bastion of the Greek side, the one Greek hero who just keeps on holding on in spite of all the rest of them being taken out. And we'll see Hector here, who in our last book was in really bad shape, but we'll see how Zeus turns things around for him, as we kind of knew would happen. Okay, let's look at the action of this book. So the book opens in the moment that the Greeks have driven the Trojans back beyond the fortifications again. We have those holes in the fortifications that Sarpedon and Hector created as they charged the Greek camp. But now the Greeks have driven them out of the fortifications and beyond the trench. Remember the trench that they set up filled with spikes to keep the chariots off? Yeah, that's going to be important again in this book. But as soon as the book starts, Zeus wakes up from the sleep that Hera and Sleep put him in, and he looks around at the battlefield and sees how all of his plans have been completely wrecked. There's Poseidon charging across the field, leading the Greeks. There's the Trojans all scattered and routed. There's Hector over there, horribly injured by Ajax and puking blood by the banks of the Xanthus River. And Zeus is like, what? I mean, I let my hormones rage for 5 minutes, and look what happens. And Hera goes, oh, I didn't do anything, it was all Poseidon. And so Zeus just lets that go, and he says, alright, fine, go get me Iris and Apollo, and I'm going to straighten all this out, and we'll get Poseidon back on track. And Hera, if you will accept my will, we'll be hunky-dory too. And then, at this time, Zeus lays out his plan for the rest of the book. Now, we've kind of seen it coming, but Zeus really lays down the spoilers very thick here. We're not holding anything back from the action for the rest of the book. And I'll comment on this a little bit more in just a minute. But Zeus says, after he finishes laying out all of that, he sends Hera back to Mount Olympus. And she goes back, and she really isn't too enthused about completely letting Zeus do whatever he wants. In fact, she doesn't immediately send Iris and Apollo to Zeus, but she takes a moment to sit there and sulk and then gripe a bit, and then kind of jab at Ares, whose son was just recently killed in the action, if you remember. And Ares jumps up and tries to jump in his chariot and throw on his armor and charge down to the field against Zeus's wishes, but Athena's smart enough to grab him and rip off his helmet and tell him to go ahead and sit down before he causes, a huge disaster for all of them. Finally, Hera's like, okay, fine, Iris and Apollo, you two need to go see Zeus. And Zeus first sends Iris down to the battlefield to tell Poseidon to back off. And so she flies down in front of Poseidon and says, hey Poseidon, Zeus says you need to quit the battlefield right now. Go home. But Poseidon is not really excited about this, and he blusters quite a bit. What outrage! Great as he is, what overweening arrogance! So force me, will he, to wrench my will to his? I, with the same high honors. 3 brothers we are, all sprung from Kronos. All of us brought to birth by Rhea, Zeus and I, Hades the third, lord of the dead beneath the earth. The world was split 3 ways. Each received his realm. When we shook the lots, I drew the sea, my foaming eternal home, and Hades drew the land of the dead, engulfed in haze and night. And Zeus drew the heavens, the clouds, and the high clear sky. But the earth and Olympus heights were common to us all. So I will never live at the beck and call of Zeus. No, at his royal ease, and powerful as he is, let him rest content with his third of the world. Don't let him try to frighten me with his mighty hands. What does he take me for, some coward out and out? He'd better aim his terrible salvos at his own, all his sons and daughters. He's their father, they have to obey his orders, it's their fate. So Poseidon is not ready to back down. But Iris says, so that's the answer you really want me to send to Zeus? And then Poseidon thinks it over and realizes that infuriating Zeus is probably not a good idea. But Poseidon still doesn't want to back down, so he huffs and puffs a little bit, and then he says, well, Zeus better keep his promise to destroy Troy. I'm counting on it. If he doesn't, there's going to be beef between us. And then Poseidon jumps back into the ocean. So now that Poseidon is out of the way, Zeus sends Apollo down to the battlefield to turn things back around. The first thing he does is land in front of Hector. And Hector, as you remember, is in really bad shape. He got completely smashed by a boulder from Ajax, and right now he's puking blood by the river. Apollo's like, what you doing, Hector? Why aren't you up there fighting? And Hector's like, I just almost died here. But Apollo says, time to get back to work, and he gives him strength and rejuvenates him and heals him and gives him some god power to go fight the battle. And so now as he's charging back towards the Greek lines, the Greeks look up and they see, oh no, here comes Hector again. In fact, this one character, Thoas, looks up and he goes, oh, I thought we killed him. Look, a genuine miracle right before my eyes. Hector's escaped again. He's risen from the dead, and just as each of us hoped with all his heart, he dropped and died at the hands of giant Ajax. But again, some god swoops down and saves this Hector. Hasn't he wiped enough of us out already? Now he'll make more slaughter, well I know. He'll never be at the front smashing our lines unless old Thunder Zeus had put him on his feet. So come, friends, do as I say. All take my lead. The rank and file go back, withdraw to the ships, but we who claim to be the army's finest champions stand our ground, face him first, try to beat him off. Spears at the ready. For all his fury, trust me, he'll quake before he penetrates our front. The Greeks just can't get a break. Just when the things seem to be turning for them again, here a god goes and snaps and heals Hector. It seems like the Trojans always get magical healings. The Greeks never do. And so the Greeks line up ready to go, but Apollo takes their courage away, and so they start scattering. And then Apollo, leading the Trojan army, then just tramples over the trench. He actually kicks it down, and the book describes it as a child who builds a sandcastle on the beach and then stomps it down. Apollo just stomps over their trenches, making it so that the Trojan army can just ride right over it. And as the Trojans start slaughtering the Greeks, Hector says, hey, don't take the armor. We gotta keep charging, keep going ahead, just leave them for now. Let's go. As the Trojan army pours forward, we have a couple of quick reactions. Nestor sees the Trojans and prays to Zeus for help. And Zeus sends some thunder. But instead of scaring off the Trojans, it only inspires them to fight stronger. We also see Patroclus peek out of the tent, where he's been helping Eurypylus for all this time, since about book, 11? And he sees how much worse things have gotten, and he charges off to find Achilles, to finally deliver that message. Okay, so pretty much the second half of this book is just one slow build that focuses primarily on Ajax and Hector. And it's punctuated periodically by Ajax shouting for his men and trying to inspire them to fall in line. And Hector doing the same thing on the other side. Hector is constantly being supported by Apollo, and Ajax is standing there fighting them all off on his own strength. One of Ajax's close friends is killed, and so Ajax calls Teucer up behind him to back him up. Teucer jumps up there and starts picking people off with his bow and arrow, but just as he's about to take Hector down, Zeus snaps his bowstring, scattering his arrows. And so Teucer instead has to grab a spear and jump into the fray. He can no longer take out the Trojan army that's approaching. There's some intense fighting back and forth, and we see little flashes of other heroes doing things. Polydamas, Mages, Antilochus, Menelaus. And as Zeus watches all of this, again the book emphasizes the spoilers. That Zeus has an exact plan going on here, and he's finally carrying it out. He's pushing the Trojans to the moment that the ships catch fire. That's going to be the turning point. And so you can see Hector pressing forward and forward and forward and trying to fire the ships, and Ajax defending the ships with incredible persistence and strength. But we're ever inching closer and closer to the moment when the ships catch fire. And we know it's coming because we've been told that multiple times. And we also know all the spoilers that will happen as soon as the ships catch fire, but the book just slowly builds to that point. And we get the continued rallying cries from the heroes on both sides. And we have Ajax jumping from ship to ship and holding everyone off. And we have Hector pressing and pressing forward. And then finally Hector grabs one of the ships and calls to his men for fire. And Ajax is there above him, fighting him off as hard as he can. And we build and build and build to the moment just before we light the ships on fire. And that's how the book ends. Okay, let's talk about the key features of this book. There are, of course, lots of great epic similes, and I can't pass up an epic simile. Here's one. Think how dogs and huntsmen off in the wilds rush some antlered stag or skittish mountain goat, but a rocky gorge or shadowed forest gives him shelter. They see it's not their lot to bring that quarry down. Their shouting only flushes a great bearded lion, ramping across their path, suddenly charging them, scattering men and packs despite their lust for battle. So up till now, the Achaeans kept advancing, close formation, stabbing away with swords and rugged two-edged spears. But once they saw tall Hector attack the ranks, they wheeled in terror. Hearts collapsed at their heels. You think you're chasing a deer and all of a sudden you get attacked by a lion. Not to mention the similes and descriptions of Apollo stomping on the trenches like a child stomping a sandcastle. That's a great vision of perspective. These humans poured so much work and effort into building these structures, and the god just kicks it over. It's very frustrating. Finally, definitely the most important feature of this book is the building of the tension, which comes through a very slowly drawn out sustained action, as well as spoiler descriptions from Zeus. We know exactly what's going to happen, and we walk there very slowly because we're building to one of the most key moments in the book. The first of the big series of events that leads to the climax. What is that big moment? It's Patroclus putting on Achilles' armor and heading out to battle, which we will see in Book 16. Thanks for watching. You can click to subscribe or watch another video, and I will see you next time as we watch what happens when Patroclus finally gets into the battle. Bye-bye.